My Girl Life podcast is sponsored by Glamour Boutique. Glamour Boutique is the leading name in cross-dressing fashion and lifestyle with a physical location in New Jersey and, of course, their famous website. Be sure to use your My Girl Life discount code MGL15. And listen, I know they have your best interests at heart, so check them out. Welcome, everyone, to another episode of My Girl Life podcast. Don't forget to show me some love and subscribe to my channel and like the episode if you liked it. It tells me I'm doing something worthwhile and allows me to keep doing it. So thank you in advance. Today, I've got Miss August in the studio, Kristen Rainbow Wolf. Welcome, Kristen.
Thank you, Maddie. It's great to be here with you.
It's great to have you. I've been wanting to have this conversation for quite a while. So Kristen is Miss August in our Living My Best Girl Life calendar, which, by the way, we are going to be picking new calendar girls for 2026 over the next couple of months. So if you would like to be considered, just use the hashtag Living My Best Girl Life in one or more of your Facebook posts and you will be considered, or just reach out to me. So anyway, let's get started, Kristen. Thank you so much for doing this. And let's start with where you grew up and what your childhood was like.
Well, I'm excited about this conversation with you. But first of all, I just want to thank you for everything that you do for the crossdresser and transgender community at large. You are such a precious soul, and your maturity, your wisdom, your fun, you're just setting a great example. You're such a leader. And I just want to thank you publicly for who you are and for everything that you've done.
Thank you very much. I feel like I'm probably as red as my top. That means a lot coming to you because you are such a fixture in our community, at least the part of the community that I'm more involved with and in touch with, especially on Facebook. Thank God for Facebook.
Oh, right. Absolutely.
Otherwise, I wouldn't see what you guys are doing. And it just feels like you're really close without being physically close. And then when we do see each other or talk like this, it just feels like we know each other a little better. So I really appreciate the social media.
We claim you in Vegas. You're with your great TGIF, our transgender October gathering. You're part of the community here, and we're just so thankful that you're a part of the larger community and a leader in it. So thank you, Maddie.
Thank you. I love Vegas. Vegas holds a special place for me. That was the place I would dress. I would only dress there, and that would be a few times a year when I would go out in public. I would dress at home alone before I started going out a lot. But when I was going to Vegas, I was all excited because I could just be free and not worry about being outed or seen. And of course, Vegas is just fun.
Yeah.
Now I get to do a little bit of that in Denver. So, and looking forward to this October to TGR. We have some special surprises in store.
Well, it's going to be a blast. October is a great time of the year to come to Vegas. It's cooler. There's so much around that Halloween time, so many fun things, so much joy in the city. So it's a good time to come.
Yeah, Kelly does a good job putting that together.
Absolutely.
Well, let's start with, where you grew up and what your childhood was like.
So, Maddie, I grew up in Texas, right north of Austin, town of Round Rock. That's where I went to junior high and high school. And so part of the larger Austin metropolitan area, but yet a little bit of small town vibe, in Round Rock. And I love that part of the country. I went to my 40th high school reunion, last year, which
exciting.
I hadn't seen some of my friends I grew up with since high school. Some of them I had. So that was
a big surprise, right?
I have to tell you,
you got to tell me about this reunion.
Well, yeah. So, to my childhood, I had a lot of femininity as a kid that I stuffed because, religiously and in society, it wasn't appropriate. And so I overcompensated, as many of us do, in hitting the gym and getting all buffed up and getting into athletics. And, so it's kind of funny now, but I was a football player and a pretty darn good one in high school.
I love it.
by college, I was a cheerleader, which my dad wasn't too happy about. But in high school, I was a
Well,
football
that was
player.
you were kind of greasing the
Yeah,
skids, right? A
exactly.
little bit of
That's when I
little bit of a
started.
segue.
In college, I started, wearing a few crop tops and and cheering, and that my precious dad, he and I are very close. He wasn't really
Oh,
excited
good.
about that, but in high school, I was a football player. So going to the reunion this year, I wondered if any teachers, or last October, I wondered if any teachers would be there. And my favorite football coach, we were undefeated that year. I
Oh my
saw him in
God.
the corner, and he's in his 80s now. And I walked up to him, and this is a Texas conservative man,
I can picture this in my head, even though I
Yeah.
wasn't there.
So I walked up to him. I said, Coach, I said, it's so good to see you. And he turned around. I said, do you know who I am? And he said, well, you're a beautiful woman. I said, well,
Nice.
Thank you, Coach. But I said, I want you to look at my name tag. And it had my name on it, Kristen, but it was my senior picture. And so he looked really closely at
Oh,
it, and he was like, I remember that face. And then to his credit, Maddie, he looked at me and he said, are you happy? Are you happy with where you're at? And I said, absolutely, Coach. And he said, well, good for you. And we
he
just
didn't.
had
He
the
didn't even. He
sweetest,
didn't even skip a beat.
he didn't even skip a beat. We had the sweetest, most amazing conversation after that. It was the sweetest thing. And I will say in general, my high school classmates were just so supportive, so incredible.
That's great, especially given a small town in Texas, right?
Yeah. And, I don't mind saying, politically, I'm pretty liberal, but I went up
Right.
to a very conservative MAGA cowboy former friend of mine, and he couldn't have been any sweeter. I said, he walked up to me, actually. He said, I want you to know I am so glad that you felt comfortable coming here, and we're so happy that you're here.
Oh, how good did that feel?
I know. I did not have one negative encounter with anybody.
That's awesome.
So
Let me ask you a question. I know it all feels special, regardless of who it is.
yeah.
But especially somebody that, whether he was far right or opposite politically than you, does it feel a little even better when those people are kind to you and accept you? Because it seems like they're coming from a long ways away to do that. And I feel like it's a bridge you just built for one person, but that's going to spread.
Well, and that's why I brought it up. I certainly don't want to get into politics in the transgender community.
Right.
We're all over the spectrum, but one thing I want people to know is you can build bridges, and there's good people in all camps. And sometimes it's just showing up as your authentic, real self. Now I'm not someone that puts my head in the sand. I've gotten a lot of hate over the years. I've had my share of that too, from people that felt like they were on a crusade, against trans people.
Right.
I've had people screaming in my face. I've, been there, had that situation, but I love it when a bridge can be built, Maddie, and when you can just person to person have, a connection there. And that's how we're going to win the war. I'm talking about the culture war at the end of the day.
The ground war.
Yeah. To show up as our authentic, loving selves. I know we're skipping ahead, but my sweet daddy, I mentioned him. He had such a hard time with my transition. And so I let him continue to use the wrong pronouns and everything. I didn't become the pronoun police. I just loved him where he was at.
Nice.
And he wouldn't look at me for the first year after my transition without looking away. But after a year or so, he warmed up, and now we're just back to connecting and loving. And so
what
sometimes
do you think changed? What do you think got him over the hump?
I think he realized after a while that I was still the same person.
Right.
I think
he had to see it over and over to realize, okay,
and
it's not going to be that different.
And I think he saw that I was happy and consistently happier than I was before. I think that was a part of it too for him.
Nice. Most people, especially in my experience of coming out, the most typical thing they'll say is what you heard is, are you happy? If you're happy, I'm happy. They may not understand it. They may not even totally accept it necessarily, but if they love you and care about you, then they just want you to be happy, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So to answer your original question, I grew up in Texas. Then I also spent a couple of years in California, and then
Whereabouts?
Orange County and LA.
Okay. I
Orange
love Orange
County when
County.
I was a
I'm
kid.
heading there next week.
Oh, are you really?
Yeah.
Where are you going to be?
Irvine, Newport Beach with a buddy. And then I'm going to go up to LA. And I'm going to meet with my music publisher. And then we're going to go out on Saturday night with Brenda and Victoria. It's her birthday, and Jacqueline is going to be driving in from Palm Springs. So if you find yourself in West Hollywood on a week from tomorrow night, hit us up.
Send those precious girls my love. I love all those girls you just mentioned.
I will. And of course, we'll send you plenty of pictures on Facebook.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But yeah, I lived in California for a couple of years, and then I got married pretty young. I went to study for the ministry right after high school, and I lived in Texas for another couple of years, and then we moved to Tennessee and had 3 kids there, and I lived there until 2003, and then moved to back to LA and then to Arizona.
Okay, I have 1,000 questions. So let me ask you first, if somebody who knew you back then as a young kid, maybe 7, 8, 9, I can't remember anything before 7 years old, but 8, 9, 10, 11, teen years, if somebody who knew you pretty well, how would they describe you if somebody were to describe Kristen or your boy name at that point? How would they describe you?
Sweet, kind, outgoing, religious. I was very religious.
Okay.
But
was that because of your parents, or you just found God yourself? And
my grandfather was a missionary in Africa, and my dad was an elder in our church. And so I grew up, going to services 3 times a week and being involved in youth group and all that. And I had a real love for God, and I still do. My definition of God has changed. I'm less religious and more spiritual, and have a much broader tent, if you will.
Right.
But yeah, I really loved God, and that was one of the reasons I kind of pushed down, in retrospect, some of the feminine that was coming out during some of those early years. And I would be playing baseball, and I'd be in the outfield picking daisies in the outfield, and my dad would,
you were
bless
that
his
kid.
heart, would say, "You don't need to be picking flowers in the outfield."
And a crop top, nonetheless. I'm kidding.
And I overcompensated, I think, by becoming very overtly masculine in high school, and being an athlete and kind of finding my my rhythm in life with athletics. But I was also in music, which, by the way, I am so in awe of your talent with your songwriting and that beautiful song you wrote.
Oh, thank you.
I love music, always have. I performed some professionally back in those days, and so yeah, that was my.
We'll have to talk about that.
A good childhood.
You mentioned you had started cross-dressing. Is that correct?
So yeah, when I was a kid.
So walk me through that. How did that kind of transpire, and what went through what triggered in your mind that I need to do this, like kind of take that first step versus being the masculine persona that you were putting out? So
I, like a lot of us that are part of the larger cross-dressing transgender community, I dabbled in makeup and that kind of thing when I was very young. When my mom was gone, I would get into her makeup, and I liked putting it on. I liked the way it felt and looked.
Do you know what age that was, roughly?
Probably 10.
Okay.
10, 11.
That was about mine too. Yeah.
Yeah. I pushed all that down though. And, when I got married.
Did you feel guilty? Did you feel shameful when you did it?
Not real shameful, to be honest, because it wasn't a conflict in my mind. I wasn't really grappling with all the ramifications of that. I just thought it looked good. And so I didn't think a lot about it. And
your only worry was what other people thought and getting caught. Otherwise, you were fairly comfortable with it. Okay, cool.
That's totally right. And so I got married pretty early, and it wasn't long into our marriage that my wife began to question some things related
Oh,
to my
really?
sexuality and gender, and mainly my sexuality. And
What
so
happened to the dress? What happened to the dressing when you got into that relationship? Did you purge?
I had pushed it down after I got into high school, and I didn't do any of that.
Okay.
None of that in college. So I got married right out of college.
I didn't either. I didn't even think about it.
Yeah.
Did you at least think about it and you had to kind of push it away?
I remember when I hit puberty, being attracted to dudes, to guys, and I pushed that way down. And I know gender and orientation are two different things. That
Right.
There is some overlap, but they're two different
Right.
things. But I pushed all of that way down, gender issues and sexual orientation. I pushed all that down. But my wife, who I loved very much, she's passed away many years ago
I'm
now.
sorry.
She noticed some things. And so we would talk about it a little bit through the years. I was a pastor. I had a church in Tennessee, and so I couldn't explore any of that until I got out of the ministry.
What did she notice that made her bring that subject up?
She noticed that I was a little disconnected sexually.
Okay.
I wasn't.
So it showed up in the bedroom.
I wasn't bad at sex. I mean, I don't mind. I'm a pretty open book. I wasn't bad at sex, but there was a performative aspect of it that I wasn't really connecting my full self in a way.
You were performing, but you weren't making love, or you know.
I loved her.
The emotion.
But,
right.
but she knew that there were some things. She asked me about it.
Women are pretty intuitive, aren't they?
Oh yeah. And I just adored her. And so she was, when we left the ministry, she was okay with me exploring a little bit of some of that. And so I began, this is
inside
now,
the marriage.
Pardon?
Inside the marriage.
Yeah. So we had moved out of our ministry, and we were in California, back to California. And I was doing a little bit of the Hollywood thing, and, doing some professional voiceover. And then I was doing a little bit of, consulting, marketing consulting. And because I had a counseling background as a minister, I worked with drug and alcohol rehab centers in Southern California. So we were out of the ministry enough that she allowed a little bit of that. I never dressed in front of her. She saw some pictures of me as Kristen. She said, well, that's pretty, but it wasn't part of our relationship.
Right.
And so she was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. So
back then,
our relationship became very much focused on taking care of her.
Yeah.
And then when she passed away in 2012, it was shortly thereafter that I went headstrong into to cross-dressing, and then finally to transition.
What do you think would have happened if she hadn't passed away? How do you think that would have played out?
I don't know.
Do you ever think about that?
We did get divorced before, right at the early stages of her sickness. It was a amicable, mutual thing. She had a boyfriend by that time, and he and I took care of her together the last couple of years of her life, which was a beautiful thing. At that time, I was looking more and more femme, and it was funny. We'd go to the hospital.
But you weren't taking hormones back then.
Not yet, but I was looking more and more femme. I was working on, the way I looked. I was being more myself, and her boyfriend at the time. And so we were technically divorced, but still very close, and, shared 3 beautiful kids together. So her boyfriend and I would go take care of her at the hospital together. We'd walk in, and they would assume that the firefighter, masculine dude was her husband. And I was still, technically at the first part of her sickness. We had, she was sick and we hadn't gone through all the paperwork. So legally I was still her husband.
Okay.
And they would say, who's the husband? And, no, they would assume he was the husband. And I would say, no, I'm the husband. And they would laugh. And one nurse shook her head. She said to my Sheila, she said, honey, I don't know what you got going on, but you got a lot of love in your life.
I love it. And I love that you were good spirited about it. And
Well,
again, it's all about intent. If somebody's trying to be mean, because you said she laughed, she wasn't probably laughing to be mean. She was just laughing kind of like we're laughing, right? It's just kind of a funny situation.
I, I literally worship the ground that woman walks on. I love her to pieces. We were very close friends. Because of some things that were happening, I won't get into all of it. We really did need
Right.
to go our separate ways as far as marriage, but we were there for each other until the very end. So I
That's
think
sweet.
to answer your question, if she was still here today, we would still be very, very close, but not married.
Interesting. And when you said she let some of, we'll say Kristen, I don't know if you had your name. Did you have your name back then?
Yeah.
Okay. Was it she allowed the dressing or did she allow the sexuality part or both?
Um, yeah. So she was very aware, particularly after we got technically divorced. She was very aware that my preference was, was men. And so she was fine with that. And it made sense to her, based on some of the things that had gone on in our relationship.
Right.
So
She
she was
started putting
supportive.
pieces of the puzzle together.
She was supportive of that. And my first real boyfriend, he helped raise money for her cancer treatment. So she appreciated him as well. So
Nice.
we had kind of an unusual situation,
But a good situation.
Yeah,
I have a friend was divorced for quite a few years. And she had shared custody and the girls were getting into their teens, but their father got sick and was dying of cancer. And, they were he was in another state and she would travel out there and she kind of helped him through it.
yeah.
He had a female friend. They weren't real serious, but, some people criticized her for doing that. And to me, it endeared me even more. She's my best friend. I mean, that's the same person who would be there for me or for those people that were criticizing it. And it just shows compassion and it just shows the kind of person that she is. And I'm really glad to hear that you did the same thing. I think that's very
Well,
cool.
and Maddie, this kind of gets back to some of what we were alluding to earlier about when you come out to somebody that you love. One of the things I try to encourage girls is don't push too hard for them to accept this new 2.0 version of you. It takes time, it takes time to process the transition and
Yes.
change. And if you can be patient with one another, it's a beautiful thing when people that have loved the old version of you can accept and love the new version of you. And even if your relationship looks different, like it did with my wife and I, it still is very beautiful. We were very close. The relationship with my kids has changed after my transition, but in some ways we're closer than ever before. So it's a
That's
beautiful thing to work on those family dynamics and let everybody just be patient with each other. If you're transgender, don't be the pronoun police and scream at people every time they misgender you or whatever. I think we all need to extend a lot more grace to each other if we really want to truly build bridges.
absolutely. I've said that exact same thing. And, as long as they can see and connect with you, they'll see that not everybody is the crazy, weird, bad people that either they're seeing on TV or people are
Exactly.
telling them about it. And I think it makes a real connection. And again, it's all about intent. So if somebody misgenders me, I know when they're doing it on purpose, and I really haven't had too much problems with that. The one thing that I was concerned about as I started coming out, almost everything was almost perfect, right? We're so happy and we're so glad for you and whatever. Then I started wondering, what are they thinking afterwards? Because I had a situation with a family member who did that, said, they supported me and maybe even shared some things about them at that time at dinner when I told them that they never had shared, which is like a lot of my relationships that I came out to ended up making us closer, just like you said. But then later on, like a year later, some things came out and I could tell they were tolerant, but they weren't accepting. And I started differentiating, okay, there's tolerance, being polite, and there's acceptance, and then there's actually participation where they talk about Maddie, and they even maybe see Maddie. Now I'm in a whole different world from you because I'm coming out in pictures to family and close friends. New friends all know Maddie first, and then they meet Jim. But it's way different than, you're saying this is me full time. So that's an even bigger transition. But it's that after acceptance later on. What are they really thinking? And it takes time to sink in.
Yeah. Yeah. Another funny story that you just reminded me of, when I was coming out to my family, my extended family, I hadn't fully come out yet. I think they were suspicious of a few things, but I hadn't fully come out yet. And I had already been on hormones, and I was one of the lucky ones that my body responded really quickly and really well to hormones.
Yeah,
and
it has.
I had pretty good breast development already, and I would have to put a binder on like trans men wear to hide my boobs when I would go home, and I would try to disguise myself and look like a dude, And finally, my sister-in-law, my brother's wife, she called me out on it. She goes, "What's going on with you?" She said,
they probably were all talking behind your back, trying to guess, and she just let it out.
And so it was the funniest thing because my sister knew. And so when we would have family gatherings, I would stay in the room with my sister, and she's a few years younger than me. She lives in New York City. So we're always excited when we see each other. And I would take the binder. When we get back in the room, I'd take the binder off and do, "Woo, let the girls out. Let them out to breathe." Oh my God. And she would laugh, and because we were, carrying on this disguise. And so finally, when my sister-in-law, called me out that time, after that, I came out to everybody. So I almost wish I would have
right at that moment.
Well, it started at that moment.
Okay. It started a domino effect. Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
Interesting. That's funny. Let's talk about your kids. Oh, I wanted to ask you, let's see, you're younger than me. Did the Caitlyn Jenner?
I'm not younger than you.
Okay. Maybe. Well, we'll see.
Well, you look young. I'll be 60 in 3 months.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, early happy birthday.
Thank you.
Did the Caitlyn Jenner thing affect you at all in terms of helping maybe grease the skids or let society know, hey, this is what it is? Did that help you even psychologically? So
yeah, I was dressing before Caitlyn came out. Before Bruce transitioned to Caitlyn, I was dressing. So it was already a thing in my life. But yeah, I would say that, especially when she accepted the award at the ESPY Awards back, or whatever that sports award was.
It was the ESPY Awards, I think. Yeah. In the white dress.
That's right. I think that was encouraging to a lot of us. Of course, that was before some of the culture wars that have happened since then.
Yeah.
But in that moment, I think a lot of us that were cross-dressers, or in my case, a trans baby, I think we were encouraged by the way people in general, received her and applauded her courage. Yeah, I was. And for the first time, maybe a little bit then, well, definitely then, and then a lot now, is, when you hear people of color especially say, well, I don't see anybody that looks like me on TV in the movies. They're not the superhero. They're not the president of the United States. You know what And I understood what they were saying, and I appreciated it. It didn't really connect with me. I couldn't totally relate. Well, now I can totally relate, because when I see a cross-dresser or a trans person in a TV show or movie, it makes me feel, now I'm very comfortable, but in the early days, it made me feel way more comfortable because I'm seeing, somebody that looks like me that does what I do on TV and in movies. And so it kind of legitimizes the thing when you're going through that guilt and shame phase, which I did. Well, and I think Caitlyn, and also some of the other, Laverne Cox and some of the other, actors and activists and those that have come out, Elliot Page, I think when that happens, the culture at large has a little bit better point of reference for what it means to be transgender. Even if people don't know a trans person or a cross-dresser, they're exposed to it more and more. Right. That way. And So you become a better point of reference when you do present yourself or introduce yourself to somebody. That person can say, "Oh, so you're kind of like Caitlyn Jenner," and I can
Right.
say, "Yeah, that's very similar." I mean, we're different people, different stories, but there's a lot of similarity there.
And it's just a sign that there's more people like this, and you're not just
Exactly.
some anomaly. And there's famous people like this.
Yeah,
Human beings are like this. They've been like this forever. You just didn't know it, right?
that's exactly right.
Let's back up just a bit and talk about your kids.
Uh-huh.
And so, how did this all roll out to your children from the beginning, and then now? I think it's probably awesome, but walk us through that experience.
So this is where I kind of dropped the ball. Real talk here. I dropped the ball
Okay.
with my kids. I didn't do a good job. They knew I was a cross dresser, and I didn't dress in front of them, but they knew I was a cross dresser. And honestly, I was dressing for many years, so I don't even remember when I told them that. Some point when they were, teenagers,
Do
they
you
knew I
remember
was a
why
cross
you told them?
I don't even remember. I mean, that sounds crazy, but it's been a long time ago. I mean, my oldest daughter, she'll be 35 this year. So it's probably, when she was 20 or 19 or something like
Was it
that.
becoming so obvious you almost had to state the obvious type
Yeah,
thing?
I let them know, and I didn't want them to find out from somebody else,
Yes.
you
You
know?
wanted to control the narrative.
Absolutely. And I didn't want them to feel like I wasn't being honest and forthright with them, because
Yes.
we were asking for authenticity and honesty from them.
Yep.
So I wanted to model that. So they
My,
knew, yeah, they knew I was a cross dresser. Where I dropped the ball, Maddie, was when I transitioned. I, I didn't really I wasn't real forthright with them, and I kind of
it just
held
went
back.
from cross-dressing into transition, and
Yes.
there wasn't a whole lot of discussion on that
You're
part.
right. Until after the fact, till I already was, developing quite a bit as a woman, and I'd really already socially transitioned, and I live in a different city. My kids are all adults, so I could kind of keep some of my life from them. And so
Right.
finally I let them know. I think it was early COVID when I let them know, because I transitioned socially, finally in 2019. So I think it was early 2020 when they knew finally that I was full time. And
Did you tell them one at a time? Did you tell them all at the same time? Did you tell them I did the oldest and then the youngest
yeah,
separately?
again, I dropped the ball. It was COVID and we were isolating. I talked to them via text and phone. And later on, my oldest daughter's a therapist. So she came up to me, and really they all confronted me, and they said, "You didn't do a good job with us." And I just broke down in tears. I said, "Girls,
Oh,
I am so sorry." I said, "What did I do? What did I not do?" And they said, "You weren't letting us know, that you weren't just a cross dresser. This is the core part of who you are, and that you were transitioning to full time. You didn't really process that with us, and it was hurtful to us." And
isn't it funny how what you feared is what they wanted the most? And if you knew that, you would have been like, oh my God, it's just that disconnect.
exactly.
And I was worried about, yeah, the kids would be like, who have you been this whole time? It's like, we don't even know you. Now, again, my situation's a little different, but I also wanted them to know it didn't have anything to do with the divorce of their mom. And that part of my life was not fake. It wasn't a lie. I really wanted them to know that, because it
So
really wasn't.
and by the way, I've been following your post about coming out to your kids, and I'm just very proud of you. I think you've done a great job being authentic, and also, sensitive to them. And I'm just
Thank
I
you.
know it's a process. I'm sure there's ups and downs in that dynamic, but I want to encourage you that through the years, it just gets better and better. I know it has between me and my girls. We're so close now,
That's
and
awesome.
the
What would
energy. Yeah, go ahead.
what would your daughter say? What grade do you think she'd give me by telling my youngest I told him on Father's Day when we got together? Would that be a D minus, or would that be a?
No, I think particularly my
I
therapist
didn't do it
daughter.
on purpose because it was Father's Day. It just rolled out that way, and it was time, and we did it.
I think my daughter would say, cheers to you for being authentic and real and honest. And, honesty is usually the best policy.
Right.
And I don't know that we always need to let everybody know what's going on in our life,
Right.
but significant people, if you're able to entrust them with that information, it can actually catapult you into a whole nother level of connection. I know the relationship I had with my daughters as their daddy was always good, but there's a dynamic that I have with them now that's much more mother energy. And, we'll be out and people will ask them if I'm their mom and they'll say yes. And
That's gotta warm your heart.
oh yeah, it's so sweet because, we're closer than ever, at this point. So even though there was some rocky waters there
Sure.
at the outset when I came out to them, we've worked through that over the years. They see that I'm happy. They see that, life overall is better for me this way.
Yeah, those reassurances, mine come in the form of asking how Maddie is in a text. So I'll say, how you guys doing on a group text? And it's usually about sports. If I get a text from them, something happened with the Colorado Rockies or the Broncos or something. But I'll text them. And when they were younger, I'd text them, how you guys doing? Good. Okay. All right. Well, that's good. And then eventually they're like, good. How are you doing? And then after I told them, it's good. How are you doing? Good. How's Maddie doing? And that means the world to me because it just shows me they're comfortable with it. And last night I was sharing, we got together with everybody and my sister and her husband for dinner, and the two boys have their girlfriends. And I was talking about the music a little bit. And of course, Brody, he had not shared the songs that I'd sent with his girlfriend, and I wanted her to hear them. So anyway, I sent it to them in a joint text, and I sent Be Bold, Be Kind, Be You. And they started asking where I got inspiration. And I told them it was Maddie's community that inspired that song. And they both did a heart on that.
Oh, that's
so
awesome.
Little things like that I get chill bumps.
Oh,
it just
absolutely.
makes me feel really good.
Absolutely.
Because I was worried about the one, he has a live-in girlfriend. So, her opinion, and even my son's girlfriend, their opinion matters now, right?
Yeah.
It's not just them, it's their partner. And so I was worried about that too. And it couldn't have gone better. So I'm very grateful for that, because not all of our sisters and brothers and sisters have the same experience.
I know that. I'm so grateful, and you can't always heal those family relationships and maintain them. And I'm aware of that. My heart breaks for our sisters and trans siblings that don't have connection with family anymore. My heart breaks. Sometimes they can be salvaged. Sometimes they can't, those relationships.
You can only control so much. Yeah.
Yeah. But when they can be worked on, it's worth the work.
Well, what advice would you give somebody where it didn't work and now there's maybe no communication? What would be your recommendation to those people? Maybe wait a period of time and reapproach, or do you have any advice? I don't mean to put you on the spot, but
no, that's a really important question. I think particularly with parents and children, if my kids had not accepted me, I would continue not to bombard them, but every now and then to send letters or text and love, unless they just told me not to, just to let them know I was here thinking about them, praying for them.
Right.
I'd send gifts even if I wasn't welcome. And I know some of our trans siblings, for their own mental health, they just need a break. And I understand that. But where you can stay even in the wings and give it time, a lot of times time can heal things. And I think if they see they being your relatives that are having a problem with your transition, if they see you being that same person and then happy and genuine and authentic and going the extra mile, that goes a long way towards healing those relationships.
Right.
And sometimes it takes years, but it can be done many times.
I also think what helps is owning it and being confident. And I know you can't just say be confident. I mean, if you could just, snap your fingers and be confident, everybody be confident, but not apologizing for it. I've seen people who I've been in transition groups, even though I wasn't transitioning. It was kind of a social outing for me.
Sure.
They were almost apologizing for who they were and being sheepish, even when they were talking to us, looking down. And I think if you look a person straight in the eye and say, this is who I am, this makes me happy, I don't fully understand it, et cetera, but be confident and own it, then I think, I know it's probably a bad analogy, but when a dog senses that somebody's afraid of them, and then the dog now becomes the alpha, unless you show, strength. I think it's the same thing with human beings. If they see that you own this and you're proud of it, you're not apologizing. They're like, oh, and again, there might be some people that will poo-poo the whole thing, but I think that's a big part of it. And people accepting you, if you own it, I think they're way more likely to accept it.
I think that's so true, Maddie. I totally agree with that. And I actually think the dog analogy is a pretty good one. But yeah, with my daughters, I think what was a real key was for them to see that I was confident and happy. And because some of the
it wasn't a phase.
Yeah. Some of the fear that our loved ones have is that we're losing touch with ourselves, or, they believe some of the narrative out there
we're
that
lost and making mistakes,
that we're going crazy. And so when they see that confidence that you speak of, that authenticity, when my kids and my family, extended family, saw that I was truly happy and really happier, that goes a long way towards that acceptance that we want.
Yes, because they may be thinking, I don't want to get totally behind this because, this could be a big mistake. And if I'm totally behind it, I'm participating in it, who knows what's going through their mind. You had wanted to discuss what you described as 3 basic categories of cross-dressers, and the 3 categories of full-time transsexual TG women. Do you want to elaborate on that?
Yeah, I actually do, because you and I have talked about this before, Maddie, that part of my concern in the larger transgender community is that, we're kind of all put in the same category. And we're not all the same. There's differences. And I think it's a beautiful thing to recognize and to celebrate that diversity, and to realize there are different groups under the transgender umbrella, and that each of those groups can be celebrated. And it's good. All of those groups are good. And we want clear communication and as much understanding, mutual understanding and respect between those groups.
Absolutely.
My heart gets burdened. I know that sounds like a minister talking. My heart gets burdened when I see, online sometimes cross-dresser communities and trans communities in conflict with each other, and you see some of that online. And so let's start with cross-dressers, because I was one for many years.
Okay.
I basically see 3 categories. One, you've talked a lot about, that is the fetish, the sexual component that some cross-dressers are attracted to initially. And with some of them, that's still the key motivation. It's an autogynephilia. It's being turned on by the idea of being dressed in femme attire or looking sexy like a woman. And I think that's a legitimate thing. I think there's a whole community. I've got friends in that community that their, satisfaction and joy in their sexual expression is in that context.
It's a very common thread. At least I didn't do a statistically significant survey, but in my years talking to people, that's been a fairly consistent one.
Exactly. So that would be the fetish or sexual play. The second category of cross-dressers would be what I would consider fashion and performance art. And that would be people that are just really into the fashion of exploring, beautiful feminine fashion.
But not drag.
Just fashion in general.
Right.
And you see this a lot of times, and not just in queer communities, but even in fashion communities in Hollywood.
Absolutely.
People, a lot of gender diversity of expression in fashion. So fashion and art, and of course, drag is performance art. And so that would come under that category as well. And of course, some cross-dressers are kind of in category 1 and category 2, and some are in just, in one or the other. And then
Well, I'm curious to hear the third one because I might be a blend of all three. I don't know. I'm 2 for 2. I'm 2 for 2 now.
And then to me, the third category of cross-dressers would be, by the way, I have some Native American roots, and I've really delved into that part of my history and even the whole gender. Yeah. So in the 90s, in Canada, actually, this spirit of this term two-spirit was coined to kind of be an over-encompassing term for a lot of tribal language that was used to talk about people that were dual gender or bigender or transgender. And so that two-spirit terminology has become, quite popular, even beyond the Native American indigenous community.
Right.
And what that refers to are people that in the cross-dresser sense, they feel like there's a feminine part of themselves that needs to be lived and experienced and expressed. It's not the core part of their identity. Their core part of their identity, let's just talk about, female to, or male to female. The core part of the identity is I'm still a man, that person would say, but there's a feminine part of me that I want to celebrate and express and that wants to have a life also. Even though the core is a man, I still have that part of me. That would be, in my understanding, a two-spirit version, of the cross-gender experience.
Well, then I just hit the jackpot because I identify with all three of those. I love that. I've never really heard it laid out like that.
Well,
and it may help because I try my damnedest to figure out why. I love to try to figure out why I'm doing this down to the nth degree, and I know I never will completely, but that gives me a little more clarity on some things too, because it is a total blend and I go in and out of those different modes you were talking about. So that's interesting to hear you put that into words.
Well, it's interesting. I was, my career was as a teacher, pastor, preacher, and I would put things in outlines often, point 1, point 2, point 3. That was what I did all the time on radio, TV, and in lectures and teaching. So that's kind of how my mind works. So when I was a cross-dresser for those years, I saw that there were those three categories. And like you said, some people really are part of all three of those camps. And then there's some that are literally just part of one of those camps and not the other two. So that's the three on the cross-dresser side. On the transgender, transsexual side. And by the way, I like the word transsexual. I know some people don't. I'm not a fan of the word transvestite.
I was going to say, I hate that word, but I know it's technically what I do.
Well, there's a little bit more negative connotation of transvestite. Oh, yeah. But transsexual was a term that actually came up in the 60s to talk about people that had really socially and particularly medically transitioned, or TS or transsexuals. Right. So the TS girls, the transsexual transgender girls are a different category than cross-dressers. There's different parts of their experience. There's different challenges.
Is that the man trapped in a woman's body type thing?
Yeah. So let's go through those three categories. Okay. The first would be, again, two-spirit. This would be some crossover between the two-spirit cross-dresser and the two-spirit trans girl. But there's some trans women and trans men also, trans siblings, but there's some trans that feel like, there really is two parts of them, that their identity is not one or the other. It's actually both. It's like 50-50 both. And they would not be being real or being themselves or even know who they were if they weren't both, because it's a core identity. And I see that as different than the cross-dresser two-spirit person. Because the cross-dresser.
I was just going to ask you the difference between, because my life, Maddie is a huge part. In fact, my best friends, they'll call me Maddie in boy mode. They call me Maddie on the text messages. I often wonder why. I'm like, you could call me either. You know me both. And I think Maddie gets people's attention and it's more fun. I don't know what's behind it, but, and I'll say, and I said to my kids, it was Maddie's community. That was the inspiration. Maddie's podcast. It's a big part. So I wonder how that fits into that, because I can't say I actually feel like I'm a woman, but I do feel like I'm Maddie. who's a woman. It's there's a lot of gray area, I guess.
Well, I think that's exactly right. I think it's like I've heard you say in interviews, it's spectrum. And I love that word spectrum because I think the two spirit part of the transgender experience is a spectrum. And I think if you're far enough,
those are the points.
Yeah.
And there's, everything in between.
I think if you're far enough over on that spectrum, then you probably would identify as a transgender person and not just a crossdresser.
Right.
Because I think a lot of crossdressers I know, like one of my best friends, she's a crossdresser. I'll call her she because I relate to her as a girl.
Right.
And, got some neighbors making noise. Sorry about that.
Wow. They getting the weekend started early.
Party. But there's a dear friend I have and she's very passing crossdresser. And I think of her as a girl when we go out and she has to tap my knee every now and then. We're talking because I'll start talking really fast. And she says, Kristen, wait. You forget I'm a dude.
Oh God, I say that all the time. I go, people, I still have a male brain. All right. So just my girlfriends. I still have a male brain. So give me a break.
So to me, that's the difference. The cross-dressers that still identify as men primarily.
That's a good point.
Yeah. But then the trans girls that really identify the essence of who they are as both genders, that would be a two-spirit trans person. And then the second category of transsexual person would be a non-binary. And that's somebody that, there's two categories of non-binary. Some of them, one day they want to emphasize one part of their gender identity, and one day they want to emphasize another. And so there's a gender fluidity there. And the other subset.
But if they're transitioned, how do you fluid back to the male part of it?
Well, some of them are on hormones, but yet they still want to live out both identities. And it's like a 50-50 thing.
So even though they may have attributes of a woman in their brain, it switches to, I'm a guy, maybe I want to do more guy things, or I'm thinking more as a guy. I'm letting that part of my brain be at the forefront, maybe.
Exactly. So you've got this dual gender non-binary person, and then you also have the non-binary person that really is almost non-gender. That they're in the middle, and they love the gender expression of just being a little bit of both,
Mm-hmm.
And so there's that person as well that's non-binary, and those are the people we normally refer to as MBs or non-binaries, are people that are kind of in the middle. So to me, non-binary is the extreme of bouncing back and forth, or just.
Now, are you referring to, are they bouncing back and forth more in their head or physically or both? And again, the answer is probably a little of, everybody's different, but
yeah.
When you talk about bouncing, are we talking about the brain, what I'm thinking, or my physical, or both?
Yeah, I would say both. But a lot of non-binary people, and particularly in our community here in Vegas, and I'm sure it is everywhere, they kind of are almost like antagonistic, not in a cruel sense, not in an angry sense, but antagonistic towards the gender construct. And sometimes you hear them use that terminology.
Right.
There's a gender construct, and they feel like they're, leading edge.
They don't want to be put in a box.
Yeah, they're evolutionaries. They don't want to be put in a box, and more power to them. That's not me, but I celebrate them for who they are. And I think they're a really important part of our larger community. They can be sometimes exaggerating the feminine or the masculine, and it could change from day to day. Or like we talked about, the androgynous non-binary person that loves being just right in the middle, and keeps you guessing. Are you a man or a woman? And I've got a non-binary friend, and they love that kind of question. Are you a man or a woman? And my friend says, well, what do you want me to be today? What do you think I am today? And
that's
so
funny.
And they just really enjoy, having that kind of vibe, going through life with that kind of vibe. So that's the second category, non-binary. Again, they can be androgynous or bouncing back and forth. And then the third category would be your binary trans people. These are people like me that you talked about feeling like you're trapped in a man's body. My primary identity is in the feminine as a woman. I'm a trans woman. And so, I'm not, non-binary. I'm definitely very feminine, even in a traditional kind of way. I fit in with,
You did even back when you were younger, but you suppressed it.
Yeah. So I fit in with the cisgender women that we're all sitting around, talking about our kids, away at college or whatever. And, talking about, taking care of, I'm in a kind of a heteronormative kind of group there with some of those girls talking about our men and, and our situations and relationships and kids. It's just like any other girl, I just happen to be
I find
trans.
myself in that situation in boy mode.
Good for you.
We'll go out with some friends and their boyfriend and husband. All of us will go out and we'll sit on the patio and they're off smoking a cigar and flying their, electric planes or whatever they're doing. And I'm sitting with the girls talking. I much prefer that. I always have. Now I can hang with the guys and talk sports and whatever, but I kind of psychoanalyze myself to a certain degree, maybe a month ago, where I thought maybe, because I never was a guy's guy, and I always felt a little shame because I dated a lot women, and I'm not handy, and I can't work on their car, and you're competing out there, and I felt less than as a guy because I couldn't do those things.
Yeah,
I can write you a beautiful song, and for some people that means way more than fixing their car.
Yeah.
But for the average woman, and now I kind of understand the manly thing. And so I wonder if Maddie is part of eliminating and reducing that shame, because when I'm Maddie, I don't have to fix their car.
Yeah.
I don't have to, be handy. The guys do that. In fact, they'll even drop me off, if I'm in heels, they'll drop me off at the door or they'll drive. And so I'm thinking, maybe I don't think that consciously, but it just runs through my mind.
Yeah.
Maybe that's my way of getting rid of my shame for not being a guy's guy. I don't know. I don't know.
Well, and back to those two primary categories of cross-dressers and then transsexual women, or transsexuals, across the board, men or women. I think transsexuals are people that have transitioned socially and or medically, one
Right.
or the other or both. And that makes them different than a cross-dresser that's, expressing part of themselves part-time. So
what do you attribute the angst or the resentment that some trans women feel towards the cross-dressers by them saying I'm trans or just being? I think it's some resentment for, you haven't gone through what I've gone through. They've probably gone through hell. It's not easy. I mean, if they've done the transition, the surgeries and the hormones, that's not easy. Living life as a trans woman, working as a trans woman, dating as a trans woman is not easy. And so that's not lost on me, but they don't necessarily know that. I'm wondering where some of that resentment comes from. Where do you think it comes from?
I think you hit the nail on the head. I think that a lot of us that are full-time trans women have felt kind of ganged up on by society, and people have not understood us. So there's been a lot of misinformation and disinformation. And when we see cross-dressers, expressing support of us, that's wonderful. But when there's criticism of us, we sometimes feel like they don't really understand because they're not living in our shoes day in and day out, dealing with the restroom issues and acceptance in society and work. And like you said, dating and family dynamics. It's a lot to transition your whole life. And there's issues that come up with that. And sometimes, even the most beautiful of cross-dressers, I feel like don't really understand the issues of what it is day in, day out,
No.
to live.
You could try to understand and be empathetic, but, on Monday morning, I get to wake up and be a white male and live my life. And then on Friday, I get to be Maddie. Now back to your other, one of the categories, I forget which one, but if I could snap my fingers and actually be a girl on Friday and then on Sunday snap my fingers, I'd probably do it once in a while.
Yeah.
If I could rock these and they were real, I might not even leave the house. So it might kill my whole social life. But
And Maddie, let me, since I didn't mean to be, critical of cross-dressers. I'm just
Oh,
saying
not at all.
that
Not at
sometimes
all.
I feel like there's not a true understanding of what it is, to really live
I don't think they could even,
as, yeah, as a
right?
woman, and particularly as a trans woman. But at the same time, I want to challenge my trans sisters that cross-dressers are not less evolved. Cross-dressers are incredible, leading edge, cutting edge, gender defying, on the evolutionary edge of who we are as humans. I think cross-dressers are amazing. I think the ability to really embody like almost two people is a beautiful, brilliant thing. So I just think there should be love and respect both ways, and
Good.
realize that our
Good for you.
situations are, while similar, are also different. There's different dynamics that we deal with in those different groups.
Well, I think of all the interviews I've done with trans women, I think every single one of them started out as a crossdresser. So, how do you know I'm not just in the beginning phase of being where you are?
Exactly.
Maybe I'm more like you than you think. Now, I've communicated enough to where I'm not. I'm not interested.
Yeah.
I don't feel like a woman trapped in a man's body. I don't want to transition. But they don't necessarily know that.
Right.
But yeah, so they started off, not everybody, a lot of them started off cross-dressing. I think if you just say, hey, it's not lost on me. I understand there's a difference and I empathize. I think that's all people need.
I think that goes a long way.
Yeah. Yeah. So we'll leave it at that. I think we're right at an hour. We could go on for a long time.
Yeah.
This blew by. I looked up. I can't believe it's already been an hour. Well, I appreciate the insight and the discussion, and I didn't even really have to follow much of an agenda because it flowed nicely, and you're a very good communicator, almost like a pastor. And
what do you know?
Okay, one last question. How did you reconcile your religious beliefs to where you are now and to who you are now? How did you square that?
That's a really good question. There's a lot of angles to this, depending on what your particular religious tradition is,
Right.
what your sacred text is, whether you're Jewish and it's the Torah, or you're Christian and it's the New Testament plus the Old Testament. If you're
Good
Hindu,
point.
it's the Bhagavad Gita. There's different religious texts. So that's a loaded question.
Good point. Yeah.
But I think the bottom line, Maddie, is that, I was walking in the woods for a couple of years praying and asking God, as I understood God, for clarity. And I said, I just want to be real and authentic. And I want to know truth. I don't want to live a lie, and I don't want to propagate a lie about anything. And so my whole life has been about discovering truth and embodying truth. And so there was a point in the game where it came to my own gender identity and my sexual orientation. And I remember thinking, if I didn't do it, at the end of my life on my deathbed, I would look back and I would have regret. And I would know that it was because I was a coward. And so for me to be as courageous and as authentic as I possibly could, I needed to embrace with gusto this 2.0 version of myself. And in prayer and in deep meditation, I knew that's what God, as I understand God, wanted me to do. And I knew that there would be a blessing and a joy that would usher in a whole new, chapter of my life. And that's been the case.
And you're experiencing it. So you
absolutely. And my relationship with God is still extremely vibrant. I may have deconstructed some of my fundamentalism, but I've not deconstructed my spirituality. I feel very connected with God and myself. And, I'm very vital in
I think there's a big difference
spiritual
in taking it all literally. And, I have one sibling that it's very literal to the word. And then I have another sibling who I'm much closer to, and she's fairly religious, but to her, it's about love and acceptance. And so she's garnering kind of the things you are out of it versus the text, and being too specific. I think you paint yourself into a corner when you do that. because it doesn't really fit with human beings and who we are.
Well,
So,
well, God, however you understand God is an artist, and there's a lot of colors and a lot of techniques in this beautiful, piece of art, this masterpiece of human existence. There's a lot of flavors and colors and stripes. You've talked about the box of crayons. There's a lot of crayons, a lot of colors. And,
yes.
and I would just leave you with this one thing that, one time the New Testament records, they asked Jesus, what's the most important thing? What does it all boil down to? Which law is the most important? And Jesus responded, he says, really just two things. Love God with all your heart, soul, strength, and mind, and love your neighbor as you love yourself. He said and then he went on to say everything else is based on those two things. And I love that because really at the end of the day, like you said, it's all about love, loving self, loving others, acceptance, being authentic, being real, growing, evolving as a person. It's just the way of love. That's what really ultimately it's about.
Adding more crayons to the box.
Absolutely.
Well, we'll end it there. Thank you so much. Great advice. Great. I love breaking those categories down because I've never really heard it put like that. And I think that'll help a lot of people.
Well, again, I think you're awesome, and I appreciate so much your leadership in our larger community. And just keep going. We're behind you, cheering you on.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And it just inspires me. I enjoy doing it. I would love to have these conversations, whether it was a podcast or not. You just can't do it at these events.
Yeah.
So I'm thrilled to just be able to get to do this. So thank you very much. That will do it for today. And remember, be bold, be kind, be you.